Salam and welcome, everyone. This is Quran Conversations, the podcast for anyone who wants to unlock the meaning and healing powers of the Quran. I'm your host, Dalia Mogahed, an author, researcher, and a student of the Quran. I'll be in conversation with one of my dearest teachers, Imam Muhammad Majid, a scholar of the Quran and longtime family counselor and congregational leader. In today's episode, our journey into the story of Yusuf takes us to the famous incident of the wife of the Egyptian minister seeking to seduce the prophet of God. You'll learn what it takes to stand your ground even when you are being coerced by someone with a lot more power than you. If you're enjoying this podcast, please review it on your podcasting platform. It helps us more than you know. Quran Conversations is sponsored by Fawakih, an online learning platform for Quranic Arabic that I myself use. Start your journey in unlocking the language of the Quran. Go to fawakih.org/journey. We hope this podcast encourages your own reflective journey with the Quran. Make sure to stay until the end to hear this week's reflection prompt. For more spiritual insights, follow me on Instagram at Dalia Mogahed. Without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Welcome to another episode of Quran Conversations, where we unlock the healing power of the Quran. I am Dalia Mogahed, and I am joined by my teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Majid, and we are discussing, of course, Surah Yusuf. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you today?
Alaikum salam, Dalia. It's good to be with you again in this beautiful journey of Yusuf alayhi salam and his journey of struggling and prevailing, inshallah.
Yes. So where we ended up, or where we left off, is we were about to start reading and discussing Ayah 22. I can go ahead and begin reading today. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولما بلغ أشده آتيناه حكما وعلما وكذلك نجزي المحسنين. When he reached maturity, we gave him judgment and knowledge. This is how we reward those who do good. And of course, there are other ways to translate al-muhsinin, and we'll discuss that in more detail. But I think this short ayah actually has so much meaning that I'd love to discuss with you, Sheikh Majid. Would you like to start reflecting on this ayah?
It is the dominant virtue of the surah is Ihsan. Mm-hmm. Been repeated all over the surah that Yusuf alayhi salam considered among the muhsinin. And it's very interesting that this ayah describe what Ihsan entail wisdom and knowledge. And the hukm, the word hukm being translated sometimes as ruling, ability to judge and to rule between people, but also means wisdom and ability to differentiate between right and wrong. But it's in the early story, the beginning of the story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He has given him that ability to have good judgment and good thinking, because otherwise he would have fallen into the sin. When he became mature, it became the age of responsibility. And that proved that he was a child when he was thrown into the well. And therefore he grew up away from his family. He developed away from his family. As if like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, like He said to Musa, I raise you under my eyes. Here, Yusuf alayhi salam was not completely orphans, but being semi-orphan because his family are not there. He lost all his protection. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He bestowed this hukm on him and ability to differentiate between right and wrong and to have sound judgment. Sound judgment comes also from ilm. Why in Quran the idea of ilm connected to hikmah? Because you might have information, but you misplace them, and you might not use them wisely. They say this sometimes. This expression, this person very informed. If they say very informed, that means he knows what he's talking about. But also, not enough to have information, but you have the ability of applying it correctly. Right. And therefore, knowledge without wisdom is a disaster, by the way, because it could be misused. Look what happened with nuclear weapons. And, the best scientists created disasters for humanity. For is the ilm and hikmah together. And then he said, وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ, that the ihsan led to the ilm and hikmah, but also is a cause and an outcome. Because you see, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيَعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهِ. You're more conscious of Allah, which is ihsan, and you worship Allah as if you see him. If you don't see him, he sees you. Ihsan. And that ihsan with Allah led to ihsan with human being. The concept of ihsan is a very fascinating concept in Islam. It's an amazing concept. I elaborate a lot on it sometimes in my workshop of a spiritual transformation. I said, your goal is to become muhsin, because there's Islam, there's Iman, there's Ihsan. So Ihsan is a perfection of Iman, and Iman is evolution of Islam. Because you see that sometimes when the word Islam came by itself alone, it means the Iman and the Ihsan. When the word Islam singled out by itself in the Quran. But when the Iman and Islam been mentioned together, that means the Iman is the creed, the i'tiqad, and Islam is the Sharia, the appearance being Muslims, that act as Muslims in general, but we don't know what is in the heart of the person. And then the Ihsan is a perfection of that, is that intimate relationship, close relationship with Allah, that is so good that the person will worship Allah as if they see Allah. But if it doesn't have that, he will not have survived all of this. If he does not have, if he did not feel Allah present in the well, he was not muhsin in the well. He was not muhsin in the prison. He was not muhsin with being put in the situation where temptations. He was not. If he was not muhsin when he became in power. Ihsan is the most important virtue a person should have in all circumstances in life. If we have that, you will overcome all of the difficulty and hardship that he faces in life.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack in what you said. I want to start at the beginning with the idea of hukman wa ilma and your point about, knowledge without wisdom can be a disaster. And what it made me think about is that this is a description of the markers of a mature man, of what does it mean to be a mature man, of what is mature manhood in Islam, and that it's actually defined by knowledge that is wise knowledge. So knowledge is power. Knowledge allows you to be competent and get things done, but it has to be based in wisdom. And it's the opposite of aggressive entitlement and arrogance, which is also sometimes based in knowledge. I know more than you. I have more education than you. I look down on you. I'm patronizing to you. So I think it's very important for us, as you mentioned, to take away from this ayah, what does maturity mean and what does Muslim manhood mean? Because I think there's a lot of confusion about that.
Absolutely. You're absolutely nailed it. Like in describing this relationship with ilm and knowledge and wisdom. Translation, the translation I have here in front of me, it says, we give him power. I said when Yusuf alayhi salam attained his full manhood. The concept of manhood is being distorted in many places, because sometimes either people flex their muscles because of their knowledge as a man, and therefore they suppress any kind of other opinion. They don't give a space to the female, even scholars in their region, for they use manhood to suppress the voice of the intellectuals, the women in their congregation, the women in their society, which is the issue of entitlement. Like we're entitled to say, what is right, and entitled we give the opinion that everyone should listen to, not the female scholars in our community. That's one thing. Secondly, idea of power and manhood. The beautiful hadith of Rasulullah when he said the best among you are those who best to their family. He defined manhood to the Sahaba.
Yeah, yes.
Said your manhood is tell me how you're treating your spouse. In one narration it says the best among you that are the best to their wives. He said specifically talking about female. Because manhood being misunderstood even in the household for a long time. فالرسول wanted to straighten up this by telling them, your manhood being determined by how your close relatives think of you, especially your spouse and people in your household. The other issue of manhood that, which is today, people having all of this called red pills, what kind of pills? I don't know what pills they're taking, but I'm taking them. I tell them I'm taking prophethood medicine. That and there's no man like Rasulullah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about manhood of Yusuf alayhi salam. Very interesting. Allah did not say وَلَمَّا بُلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ أَتَيْنَاهُ جَمَالًا وَحُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. He didn't mention his physical beauty at all.
Yes, right.
There's no emphasis on physical beauty. Mm-hmm. Only in the coming story verses that you come to know that he was handsome, was beautiful man from the coming verses. And by the way, this verse has an introduction to coming verses. Why? Because if Yusuf alayhi salam did not focus in his hukm, ability to differentiate right and wrong, to control himself. Because my father used to say, this ayah, it talks about hukm wa ilm, but Yusuf alayhi salam isn't in charge of anything. What is in charge of? He said he's in charge of himself. How do you control yourself? Because the hukm begins with yourself. Before you pass judgment on others, before you exercise any control on others, you have to do self-control. But his hukm begins with himself.
And that's the real power.
Yeah, that's the real power.
That's the real power. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting in the way this ayah explains it is that hukm and ilm, wisdom and knowledge, which people want, which people strive for, is given to you as a compensation for ihsan.
That's true.
So you strive to make your character beautiful, and then Allah will grant you these gifts. Absolutely. But it begins with your effort toward ihsan. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the meaning of ihsan, because the hadith that you mentioned, of course, about ihsan being, the meaning of it is that you live life as if you see Allah, and if you don't see him, know that he sees you. And I was reflecting on the meaning of ihsan, and sometimes I think we all translate it oftentimes as perfection. And I was challenging that for myself a little bit, because perfection can mean kamal in Arabic, and kamal is for Allah. But that ihsan comes from the root husn, which means beauty. And so if you think about the difference between beauty and perfection, is that beauty is still flawed. There's still a human flaw there. There's still a human aspect of need, not flawed, but still in need of divine strength. And so the concept of perfection now has been studied as it can actually make you very anxious, because you're never going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
But to think of yourself as striving for beauty in your character, that can be much more empowering, rather than the absence of any deficiency or any deficit, which will never happen, because as humans, we are not God. Only God is perfect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I say perfection of iman here, in being mindful of Allah's presence, that's the peak of iman. That including when a person commits a sin. People think that a muhsin does not commit sin. A muhsin is a person when he commits a sin, feel Allah's presence and fear Allah, and therefore he or she immediately repents. Repentance is part of ihsan. People don't realize that. But ihsan is not a stagnant state. It's not a stagnant state. Ihsan is a struggling state, that you're struggling with your faith and so forth, because you feel the presence of Allah. When you commit a sin, you repent immediately, feel shame of it, but also feel a sense of longing to Allah, want to come back to Allah. This is what ihsan means. Because we are not creating utopia here, that you be in a state with no sins and so forth, and no mistakes. That's right. That would create a lot of tension. It's very interesting, though. The ihsan, which feel in the presence of Allah, lead to the ihsan of the tongue. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. Say what is good to people. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Engage with them with the best manners.
Yeah.
Now, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about imsakum bima'ruf wa tasrihun bi ihsan. Ihsan even in dispute and divorce.
Yes.
In
Yes.
religion, you do ihsan in that. Rasul sallallahu said, "Inna Allah yuhibbu al-ihsan fi kulli shay." Authentic hadith. Allah loves ihsan, beauty, kindness, gentleness in everything that you do. He said, even as you slaughter an animal, they have to do ihsan.
Yes.
Therefore, ihsan is the most important attribute a person should have as a Muslim. Because if we act with ihsan, that always first of all, we think to do our best. Secondly, that we realize that we need to bring the best of ourselves, to do our best, but also bring the best of ourselves. Because sometimes we suppress the best of ourselves. You can see a person have ihsan, but they've been suppressing it until something happened and breakthrough happened to them. And then the muhsin aspect of them shows again. For my teacher used to say to me, look at ihsan like a thread in everything that you do, in everything, in your salah, salli bi ihsan. When you talk to people, talk with ihsan. When you give sadaqah, give it with ihsan. When you receive something, receive it with ihsan. When you interact with your neighbor, interact with ihsan. As you become in charge, become a manager, do it with ihsan. When you become a follower, do it with ihsan. He used to say ihsan like a thread in everything you do. And if you seek that, become muhsinin, one of the muhsinin, then you become like Yusuf alayhi salam. Because he was consistent. There's a consistency in Yusuf alayhi salam's story because he was muhsin.
Yes, that's such a beautiful visual of having a thread of ihsan in your entire life, in every interaction, whether it's mundane or monumental. I think I will definitely take that back with me. I also wanted to point out something from an earlier episode where we talked about the importance of identity and knowing who you are and where you came from and who your ancestors are, even if they are just your spiritual ancestors. Because part of the reason that he could maintain his beliefs and his roots in such a difficult situation, even though he was a child when he was taken into slavery, is because his father told him who he was. And when as we talked about breaking a slave, making someone lose their identity, lose their sense of where they come from and who they are. And he had that so solid from what his father taught him of who he is, who he comes from. And and we know he remembered because he told the people in the prison later on who he was. And in this moment, he's a child, he was taught about it, and he was in this home, and he was grounded in this knowledge of his identity, which is such a powerful contributor to how we think of ourselves and then how we behave.
This is so beautiful. You're right. One of the things that when the Quran said, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, he was muhsin to his father. He has time with his father, spend time with his parents. The ihsan that also of his father toward him, because sometimes people think that the ihsan only for children to parents. But what the ihsan for parents to the children, he did the ihsan of raising him well, having him to have this beautiful relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's one of the things that I tell parents when I do workshop. I tell them that, your idea of raising good children, sometimes it's based on how you can create them in your image. You want them to be something that you imagine them to be. You not allow them to reach their potential. Like Yaqub alayhi salam he tried his best to protect his child, but his child have experienced this amazing experience that he still stayed as Muslim. What he need to teach him, the virtues of Iman, believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter what the child goes out, come back in, struggle, the foundation is good, don't worry about that. But for sometimes with the idea of controlling, you want to control the outcome, want to control things and so forth. And sometimes our children discover their own thing. They say, I want to do this, or I don't want to do that. As long as it is within the boundaries of Islam and so forth, we should encourage them to discover themselves. Like there's no more discover, although this was imposed on Yusuf alayhi salam, but his resilience, being muhsin, have carried him on for decades. Imagine, like, not only was away from his family, but the society turned against him. But he had no bitterness, have no kind of thing. This resentment.
Mm-hmm.
How can you stay like that if you don't have ihsan?
Right.
Ihsan make you grudge-free, jealousy-free, this kind of resentment-free. But it's a process. Ihsan is a way of dealing with ourselves or our nafs. Because the more you remember Allah, look into your behavior and says, what things I need to get rid of? What things I need to change? So to remain and to stay in the state of ihsan.
And it's so funny, Yani, it's a good reminder, and it's a beautiful fact that his signature quality is muhsin. Over and over it's mentioned in the surah, which comes from the same root as beauty and physical beauty as well.
Yes.
And yet it's actually emphasizing his inner beauty. So he was as had the beauty of half creation. And so many people, as we will find out in a minute, are blinded by his outer beauty and don't have the basira to see his inner beauty, which is actually what is important and what Allah was praising him for, as you mentioned.
That's beautiful. Absolutely.
Okay, let's go on to the next ayah. Sheikh, would you be able to read this one?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وراودته التي هو في بيتها عن نفسه وغلقت الأبواب وقالت هيت لك وقال معاذ الله إنه ربي أحسن مثواي إنه لا يفلح الظالمون.
I'll read the translation. The woman in whose house he was living tried to seduce him. She bolted the doors and said, "Come to me." And he replied, "God forbid. My master has been good to me. Wrongdoers never prosper." There are many, many meanings and lessons from this very important, famous ayah, right? It's a pivotal ayah that turns the story and talks about power, persuasion, holding your ground even when you have less power in a situation, standing in your principles and in your truth even when someone is not only tempting you but actually has a lot of power over you. And so we really need to spend time taking the layers from this ayah. I can start with some reflections. Yes. So first, she's described as the one in whose house he was in. And that means this power imbalance. They're not equal in this. This isn't, two equal people and one is, the woman's trying to seduce the man at all. He is a servant in her home and he has been sold to her as a slave. So that's very important to understand. And so he could, as someone else in his place, could feel this sense of indebtedness. Yeah. I'm indebted to them. They've been good to me. I've been here since I was a child. And also the familiarity of this relationship. This is someone he knows well. He's been living in her home for years. And so it would be very easy to fall into this kind of relationship simply because people are groomed this way. This is how young people are groomed. They're initially treated very well. They have this sense of indebtedness to someone older, and then it's turned into exploitation. And so it's important to understand just how hard this test was. It wasn't just anyone trying to seduce any man. That's not what it was. It's very important. It was a very difficult test, much harder than we maybe understand. And a sense of familiarity could also be a sense of affection. This is the only person who he's been around. He's been separated from his family for years. And yet, what does he say? He says, my master or my Lord, Rabbi, right, is the one who's been good to me. He's attributing any good that has happened to, and there are two ways to understand this ayah, at least two ways. One is he's attributing any good that has happened to Allah, or he's giving credit to, the master, the man of the house. Either way. But the way I always read it in my mind is he's saying, it's not you who's been good to me that you think I'm indebted to you. It's Allah. Allah's the one that gave me any good in this situation wasn't from you. It was from Allah. So I don't feel indebted to you that I owe you something. The obedience I owe is to Allah, not to you.
That's beautiful.
I also want to point out that she locked the doors. Now, Sheikh Sharawi always points, when he does the tafsir, he says, it wasn't just one door. It was like layer after layer of doors. Al-abwab. There are a lot of doors. So this was a situation of privacy.
Yeah.
Where it makes it even harder, because you feel like this with this kind of Khalwa with a member of the desired sex, people have their inhibitions fall because of this privacy. So she was making it very difficult for him. And so there was this absolute privacy, which is a further step in the temptation. And then the third thing I wanted to mention is she invited him to her, right? And so Yusuf resists and calls on Allah's help. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit more, because it's important to understand that when we're in a difficult situation, we have to ask Allah's help to protect us from falling into sin. We can't do it alone, no matter who we are. And I'll stop there and
that's
love your reflection.
That was exactly I think wonderful. The word وراودته وفي بيتها. This murawada, that means she used all the means and ways for him to try to convince him to commit a sin. You eloquently said في بيتها عن نفسه, because she never treated Yusuf عليه السلام this as his home also. ورادته التي هو في ولدته التي هو في بيتها عن نفسه وفي بيته عن نفسه. بيتها, that means she the one who owns the house. She's the one in charge. نعم. وفي بيتهم عن نفسه. بيتهم, it doesn't belong, the house not belong to him. One of the things that I always explore in this ayah is the idea of domestic violence.
Yes.
Where the man sometimes, or a woman, in this case is a woman now, but most of the time men do this too. It is my house. Get out of my house. Like, really? It become your home? We've been 20 years being married. Become over sudden your house? My house. Don't do this. That is one thing. But also the idea of the abuse that happened in the household, where it's supposed to be, the home is supposed to be a place of security. There's sometimes people don't believe that even they belong to the house because they seek pleasure outside of the house, somewhere else. If you believe that your home is your home, then you don't seek pleasure somewhere else. Rasulullah said, you seek it in the home where you live. Therefore, when people don't consider the home is a home, then they themselves, they said, no longer I would belong to this home. Okay? في بيتي عن نفسي. And that's why the word bayt is a place where you spend the night, from a beat, the place where you come at night and take rest. That's why the Quran called the place where we live maskan, second place of second, tranquility. Also place of bayt. A bayt is a place where you rest as well. But في بيتها عن نفسه. And you see that if you look at the tajweed, الرجل هو في بيتها عن نفسه, and there's a tashdid there, the bannun, there's emphasis that she really want to seduce him and want to break his nafs, عن نفسه. And because here it is not, there's no consent, although Zina was consent also is wrong, but here عن نفسه, that want to break his resistance عن نفسه. طيب وغلقت الأبواب, there's أغلق الباب, close the door. وغلقت, that means closed, like put layers of, like you close the door is one thing, but you lock it with the key. Is هذه غلقت وغلقت الأبواب. That means she secured the homes, and that's why there's no one can get to that place except her husband. They don't have the keys. No one else. No one of a servant, no one in the palace can have access to that place. If it wasn't of her husband, just came to the room because he has the key. وَقَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. Now, Yusuf alayhi salam feel like in prison. But in prison, and being isolated with this woman, this called Khalwa Jabriya. It was enforced Khalwa. It was not Khalwa, it happened just people together in the place, but being forced Khalwa. Forced Khalwa, it is abuse.
Yes.
You know? وغلقت الأبواب. Then after she did all of that, now she used another method. This is she told him that there is no way he can get out. She abused her power of being the wife of his master and closed the doors. But now she's using other power, which is the sexual desire power. وقالت حيت لك. This is another power that she used on him as a man. Now, in these circumstances, what a person, Yusuf said, is not my fault.
Right.
I've been put in a situation. I have no other options. Just do it and move on. As an option like that. But Yusuf alayhi salam thought about, first of all, the fear of Allah. قال معاذ الله. Would he seek refuge and protection from Allah at that moment? Because himself is a human being. قال معاذ الله. That when you say أعوذ بالله, I seek refuge by Allah, you seek a protection at that moment from your own self.
Yeah.
Because now all kind of things can come to his mind, says, I could have said being forced into it. قال معاذ الله. Therefore, you're asking Allah for help. The other thing, and this, if we interpret it like the Lord, he had meant his master, he reminded her that your husband was kind to me. I cannot, what's wrong with you? You want me to violate your husband honor? He been kind to me. I cannot do this. إنه ربي أحسن مثواي. That's one interpretation. The other, he said, is Allah that make me beautiful? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me that way? But this ihsan of his, you don't see it, as you just said eloquently a minute ago. You see only my physical side of it. By the way, I'm a muhsin. I not only have a beauty inside, inward. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be posing the cover of magazines. I'm not a female model. I'm not going to brag about I can have every woman I have. I can. Like those what people do, those handsome guys goes around. I can have any woman I can, and they walk in the place and said, oh, I don't believe I have it. Really? One of the guys said to me, I used to go to places just to see the tension of women to me. Alhamdulillah, Rabbana hadahu, yani. Allah guided him. He said, I just want to see I still have it. That I can draw the attention of women to me. Here, Yusuf alayhi salam said, you're looking to the wrong side of me. You think that I can do this? Why? He said, إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. This is injustice. This is wrong. First of all, you committing injustice to me by using your power over me, closing the doors, and try to seduce me, and have no way out, and you have the upper hand. The second, you committing injustice to your husband, that you want me to commit a sin that violates the honor of your husband. And if I were to do it, also I'll be unjust to myself and to him. The idea of dhulm here is a very important idea. You know what dhulm? Dhulm comes from darkness also. Because when a person in a moment that will be completely blind, the light goes off. And that's how the dhulm come to be. قال إنه لا يفلح الظالمون. You brought me the dark space. You are blind now by your desire. There's something very important here I want to share with you, and then maybe you can elaborate on that. It's a power dynamic. Many people said to me, why this woman listen to this Quranic teacher or this child, teenagers in a Quranic school? They should have known better. I said, listen, you can say all kind of things, but the power dynamic, you are completely dismissing the power dynamic. The idea of grooming, you said it beautifully. We have religious leaders groom 13, 14 years old girls until they become 18 years old, and then they seduce them. That's grooming. Therefore, we cannot dismiss that. We cannot dismiss the power that that person have over this innocent soul. Therefore, the power dynamic here, it has to be recognized, has to be acknowledged, that it is a factor on people falling in the trap of abuse and molestation, all kind of. It's not by their free will. How many times a child or a teenager girls had teachers or somebody close the doors, or intimidate them. If you tell anyone, no one gonna believe you because I'm the famous guy, I'm known and so forth, and therefore be careful that you're gonna lose in this. Therefore, they kept their mouth shut. They be quiet for a long time. They dealing with their own pain alone, Therefore, it's very important. This just verse has so many wisdom in it.
Thank you so much, Imam Majid. This is an incredibly, incredibly important point about power dynamics and how it influences people to do things, and then they then live with that guilt and that shame, and aren't able to express themselves and aren't able to seek help. I think, this ayah really talks about that. That part of why the situation was so difficult is because of this power dynamic and the fact that he was in her home under her authority. As she probably was implying, who do you think they're going to believe, you or me, a servant or the woman of the house? So all of these dynamics were playing into this situation. And when you talked about dhulm, I thought that was such an important point, because I said, I was thinking that the final sentence about prospering or success is that people often succumb to pressure because they think if they give in, this is not in the terms of coercion of a child or someone in an authority, but sometimes people succumb to the pressure of someone in authority because they think that if they win favor with someone stronger, that this will give them an edge, or this will get them to go, to move ahead in their career. And we saw this with, that's how the Me Too movement began, is exposing one individual who was promising women all of these things in terms of their career advancement. And so people sometimes succumb to these situations of exploitation because they're so desperate for this kind of advantage or whatever. And Allah is reminding us that He will not allow anyone who does wrong to prosper. That is not how you get ahead. وَلَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. That if you think this is your ticket to a promotion or a part in a movie or whatever it is that people compromise, however the compromise looks, compromise their values to pander to power. This is reminding us that is not how we prosper. That is not how we succeed.
That's a very good point. Wonderful.
And I thought it was interesting that there are at least 3 reasons that people compromise their ethics, right? So, a sense of reciprocity or indebtedness. I owe him. I need to do this to win favor with the powerful. If I do this, I'll be ahead. 3, they feel, overpowered or dominated by a powerful person, and they're afraid of retaliation. He could have been very afraid of retaliation, and he should have been afraid because that's in fact what happens, right? If they don't comply, something bad's going to happen to them. And every single reason that people might compromise their ethics is responded to in this brief verse. Every single one. It said, no, not this, not this, not this. Yusuf models being upright in the face of temptation and pressure, and this goes beyond temptation. This is about coercion. This is about power dynamic, and he still stands upright. And he tells us, and this is so important because, as you mentioned, Sheikh, the first thing he says is ma'ad Allah. He seeks refuge from Allah. We cannot, in these situations of being pressured to compromise our ethics, we can't resist that alone. We need the help of Allah. We need to seek His protection. And that also means when people do succumb, we have to not look down on them if we could resist, because that was just a protection from Allah. That's not something we shouldn't feel superior, but rather just grateful that we were protected from that sin.
Yeah, since you said that, a thought came to my mind that we not being only seduced by physical attraction, physical relationship, we're being seduced by power, sometimes by money, prestige. All of that is just one kind of temptation that we have. But also this closing the doors. There's some people say to you, there's no door except my door. You cannot, where are you going to go?
You're trapped.
Only through me.
Yes.
Only me, I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have to listen to me. And husband sometimes to his wife that's a migrant wife who doesn't have green card and maybe she doesn't speak English at all. She doesn't have the skill sets. She doesn't know how to drive. Husband said, if I abuse you, where are you gonna go? You don't have a car. You don't have a driver license. You don't speak good English. The only door is me.
Yeah.
As he thinks that he control all the doors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many times, alhamdulillah, those women break through and they do go and study English. They do go and have career and so forth. And they prove those guys wrong. For this, like she said, I close all the doors, that physical doors. But some people, sometimes they use this figurative doors that there's no doors except through me. And that is also abusing the power.
Mm-hmm.
And the power dynamic that where you gonna go? I am the door, subhanallah. And this word nafs and nafsihi, our nafs has a power that can become a giant, or we can lose the power ourselves and then become in the hands of other people to do whatever we like to do with our nafs. For we can have become resilient and have this massive power within ourselves. Like you have the story of Sumayya, who refused to give her Islam, that though they tried to seduce her and to push her to submit by telling her first, you become, you as a family, poor family, we're going to take care of you, we're going to give you money. And then when she refused, then they used the power of torture, but she didn't give up.
Yeah.
Resilient human being.
I really love what you said, because I think when we are in positions of feeling tempted to compromise our ethics, it often comes with a feeling of being trapped. I don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. I'm trapped. I don't have any way out. Either the person who's tempting you or persuading you is telling you that, making you think that, or you're in a situation where you truly do feel trapped. And this shows us, this reminds us that there's always a door out. It may not be easy, but Allah, if you want out of that situation, Allah will open a door for you, no matter what. And have the courage to fight for that door.
Absolutely.
I love, and the other point you made that I think I just want to underline is that it often begins with temptation or bribery, or here's what I'll give you.
Yes.
If you do this. But when you refuse, even in the case of like collaborators,
yes,
where they'll say, oh, here's this advantage I'll give you, I'll pay you, I'll do this. And if you refuse, then it's blackmail, then it's threatening, then it's coercion, then it's torture. So this is exactly how it looks. It's like the variables, the conditions of any situation of temptation or of feeling pressured is you feel trapped. There's a power dynamic. They try to seduce you with something you want or may want. And then if that doesn't work, they threaten you.
Exactly. Targhib don't tarhib. They entice you, and then if you don't, then he punish you. One of the things that I realize also, that sometimes we also close doors in ourselves. What I mean, sometimes Shaitan telling us there's no way of you enjoying yourself except through this way. Be yourself. Be yourself. All the doors are closed. Why don't you accept me the way I am? But committing a sin, a wife or a husband or somebody who do something outrageous in the marriage and says, just accept me. It's okay for me to be drinking in front of the children, because that I can't. It's okay for me to do this or that. Also to ourselves, that we have to know that there's always exit. Yeah. Shaitan should not lock us in. He locked us in the sin.
There's always
way out. You seek Allah, and Allah break the shackle for you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't submit to the slavery of sins also. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَحَطَتْ بِهِ خَطِيئَتُهُ, that being surrounded to the sin, he couldn't get out of it. Created that in environment himself or herself. So you have to be able to break through. And that's why they say in submission, there's absolute freedom. In submission to Allah, there's absolute freedom, because it liberates from anything other than Allah. And Allah is infinite in his power, infinite in his mercy, and so forth. And then you become really in touch with yourself. That's why Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was in the well, he felt free, because he has Allah with him. When he is in this situation now, he felt that he need to be mindful of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why he said, Ma'ad Allah, oh Allah, give me protections. You're going to see it in later, inshallah, when we discuss this in the next episode, when he says that I'd rather to go to prison than to do this. It's very interesting, how Yusuf alayhi salam was thinking in his resistance. First, ma'ad Allah, try to reason with her. Let's have dialogue. Let me tell you why it's this wrong to do. But she said, no, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to move it from this nice conversation to aggressive, physical, confrontation. Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get into that next episode. But thank you so much, Sheikh, for this wonderful conversation. And thank you to all our listeners, and we will talk to you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Share this episode with others who may be interested in the meaning of the Quran. Also, we love hearing from our listeners. Tell us your reflections at Quran.conversations, our Instagram page. We read every single one. Finally, we hope this podcast encourages your own reflective journey with the Quran. This week's reflection prompt is, has there ever been a time when you felt pressure to compromise your values? How can the story of Yusuf help us live in our integrity? Until next week, salam.